I threw a party for my adopted daughter after her graduation from nursing school and invited all my family members, including her real parents who willingly gave her to me because they didn't want a child. Everything was going on perfectly until she gave a speech and started thanking everyone. When it got to my turn, she said something that changed everything I felt for her. I took an action that many thought was too much, but I guess everyone would have done the same. I still remember the first time I saw her, tiny, swaddled in a pale pink blanket, her eyes barely open and her fists curled like she was ready to fight the world. The social worker had her in one arm and a clipboard in the other, reciting information like she was reading off a menu. Parents relinquished custody voluntarily. No history of drug use. Healthy vitals. I didn't need the sales pitch. I had already made up my mind. I was 33, single, and not exactly what people would call father material by conventional standards. But when I looked at her, this tiny, discarded soul, I didn't see someone else's child. I saw mine. Her parents had walked away without a second glance, but I walked toward her and never looked back. Raising her wasn't easy, not by any stretch. There were tantrums in Target aisles, ER visits for allergic reactions, and a middle school phase where she dyed her hair jet black and insisted her name was Raven. But I didn't flinch. I was at every parent-teacher conference, every dance recital, every flu season with a humidifier in one hand and a thermometer in the other. I didn't just raise her, I built a life around her. I made sure her birthdays were magic and her Christmases were bright, even when money was tight. I remember skipping meals some months just to make sure she had the latest shoes or a class trip she didn't want to miss. I never said it aloud, but I thought she'd feel it, that unshakable, unconditional love that I hoped would someday echo back to me. As she grew older, she started calling me Dad more naturally, slipping it into sentences without hesitation. I told myself that meant something, that we were building more than just a life, but a bond. When she got into nursing school, I was the one who screamed loudest. I covered tuition without blinking, co-signed her first apartment lease, paid for her textbooks, her laptop, even her Uber rides to clinicals. When she failed her first exam, she sobbed on my shoulder for an hour, and I held her like I did when she was 3 and afraid of thunder. I told her, "It's just one test. You've got this." And she did. She turned it around. She became someone everyone admired, driven, bright, compassionate. And I beamed with pride every time someone told me I had done a good job. So when her graduation finally came, I didn't want to do the bare minimum. I wanted to give her something unforgettable. I rented a banquet hall. I ordered custom invitations. I called every family member we had, even the ones I hadn't spoken to in years. Yes, that included her biological parents. It wasn't out of generosity. It was for her. I figured, maybe seeing the people who gave her life and the man who raised her under the same roof would give her a sense of completeness. A gift of closure, maybe. I even paid for their flights and hotel, and sent a car to pick them up from the airport. That's the kind of father I was. Always thinking about what might make her feel more whole, even if it chipped pieces off me. The day of the party was perfect, at first. The decorations were a mix of lavender and silver, her favorite colors. There was a DJ spinning 90s R&B, her favorite playlist. The catering was flawless. Mini crab cakes, shrimp skewers, and a mac and cheese bar that had everyone going back for seconds. I gave a toast, lighthearted and emotional, and watched as guests wiped their eyes and clapped for the both of us. Her biological mother approached me briefly, half-heartedly thanking me for stepping up when we couldn't. I nodded, but her words didn't land. I wasn't doing this for gratitude. I just wanted my daughter to feel celebrated. And for a while, it looked like she did, until the microphone passed into her hands, and everything I thought I knew shattered in an instant. She started her speech with a beaming smile, thanking her professors, her friends, and even her roommate who once nursed her through the flu. Then she turned to her birth parents, calling them the ones who gave her life, even if they couldn't raise her. They stood awkwardly, unsure whether to smile or cringe. Then came the part one had waited for, the part where I thought she'd acknowledge our journey together. "And now," she said, turning toward me with a grin that now haunts me, "to the man who was my AITA." The crowd laughed, assuming a joke was coming. But her voice didn't crack with humor. "I never loved him," she continued casually. but I sure enjoyed spending his money. You could hear the air leave the room. Forks clinked against plates. Someone cleared their throat too loudly, and the DJ slowly reached for the volume knob. My smile froze, and the glass in my hand felt suddenly too heavy. I looked at her face, trying to find something: regret, nerves, even awareness, but she was as calm as if she were reading a grocery list. She went on to toast herself, lifted her glass, and laughed again. I didn't say a word. I stood up, pushed in my chair, and walked out of the hall. Nobody stopped me. They didn't need to. I think they all knew something irreversible had just happened. I sat in my car for what must have been an hour, replaying her words over and over again. I never loved him. I had imagined all kinds of emotions that night: joy, pride, maybe a few tears, but never humiliation, never betrayal, and definitely not indifference. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the steering wheel and thought about every moment that led to this one. Every decision I made, thinking I was building a relationship rooted in love. What I realized, sitting alone in that parking lot, was that love only matters when it's mutual, and hers had never been. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun above me like it had answers I couldn't reach. My phone lit up a few times, texts from guests, some from cousins who didn't quite know what to say. Are you okay? Did she really mean that? Man, that was brutal. But I didn't respond to any of them. What was there to say? Nothing hurt, quite like realizing that everyone around you had witnessed your downfall in real time. Not just a private betrayal, but a public unveiling of how little you meant to someone you once considered your entire world. By morning, I felt hollow, like I'd aged a decade overnight. I got up, made coffee, and stood at the kitchen counter watching the pot fill. The same coffee pot I'd bought on sale because she liked the one that made iced lattes. Every corner of that house had her fingerprints on it. The couch she picked out, the paintings she liked, the shoes she left scattered in the hallway. I had built a home not for me, but around her, always considering her comfort, her preferences, her dreams. I had once told someone, half joking, that I was just a supporting actor in her story. Turns out, I wasn't even that. I was the prop, the ATM, the fool who kept on swiping. I debated whether to go back to the hall that morning to help clean up. I'd paid a few people to handle it, but part of me still felt responsible. Not just for the mess, but for the whole event. For inviting those people. For giving her a platform. For thinking love was enough to make someone feel gratitude. I did end up going, though. I told myself it was to collect the decorations, but really, I think I needed to stand in that room again, to face the ghost of what happened. When I walked in, the place was half empty. Balloons deflated. Confetti stuck to the floor. One of the workers nodded politely at me, and I nodded back like I wasn't the man everyone had pitied just 12 hours earlier. I found her speech folded on the podium where she'd left it. I read it slowly. The words were almost worse in print. He's always been there, financially. Couldn't have done it without his credit card. Not once did she use the word love. Not once did she say dad. Just he. Cold, distant, transactional. I sat down in one of the folding chairs and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. For years I had been carrying her through life like a man carrying a vase he thought was priceless, careful not to let it fall, always protecting it. Turns out, the vase never saw me. It only saw the hands carrying it. The memory of inviting her biological parents kept playing in my head. I hadn't spoken to them in almost 20 years, and I'd reached out solely for her. I thought it would be a gesture of love, one she might appreciate someday. I didn't expect thanks, but I also didn't expect to be upstaged by people who'd given her away like a pair of shoes that didn't fit. During the party, they'd kept to themselves mostly. Her mother wore a tight smile that cracked every time someone asked her a question. Her father had a beer in hand and a stare like he wished he were anywhere else. But in the speech, she had praised them, thanked them, called them the ones who gave her life. Meanwhile, I, the one who gave her everything else, was reduced to a punchline. I stayed in that empty banquet hall for over an hour. Just me and the faint smell of catering trays. I sat there and thought about every moment we'd shared. The time I sat outside her first date's house until she got home. The hours I spent helping her study for biology. The way she used to fall asleep on the couch and I'd carry her to bed, even when she was 15 and too big to lift easily. I thought about the way I used to pray over her while she slept, asking God to protect her, guide her, help her find her path. I thought I had been part of that path. I thought I was her home. But the truth hit me like cold wind through a cracked window. I had always loved her more than she ever loved me. And last night, she had confirmed it in front of everyone. When I finally got home, I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry. I was just tired. Bone-deep tired. I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled through my bank app. Her rent was scheduled to come out in 2 days. Her phone bill was due in 5. I looked at every automatic charge tied to her: gym membership, streaming subscriptions, grocery delivery services. I added them up in my head. The total wasn't the point. It was what it represented. Each charge was a thread tying me to someone who didn't see me as a person, just a walking wallet. I paused, my finger hovering over the cancel button. For a moment, I hesitated. But then I pictured her face at the podium. That casual cruelty. That smirk. And I pressed it. One by one, I canceled every single thing. That night, I unplugged the Wi-Fi and turned off my phone. I sat in silence, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I needed to hear myself think. I needed to feel what it meant to choose myself for once. There was a strange peace in it, like a fog lifting. I realized I'd spent so many years trying to be everything for someone who couldn't even give me the bare minimum of acknowledgement. Love doesn't always have to be repaid, but it should at least be respected. And what she had done, what she had said, was the kind of disrespect that doesn't fade with time. It settles. It stains. I told myself that night, sitting in that quiet house, that I was done waiting for her to love me. I had waited long enough. From the moment I held her as a baby to the moment she shamed me in front of friends and family, I had waited. Waited for her to see me, to value me, to love me back. But that wait was over. I wasn't an ATM. I was a man, a father, and I deserved more than being someone's financial plan. The next morning felt like waking up in someone else's life. My bed, once warm with the weight of years and routine, felt foreign. My home, once a sanctuary of laughter, late-night talks, and the smell of Saturday pancakes, felt sterile, like a hotel room I'd overstayed in. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't even change out of yesterday's clothes. I wandered into the kitchen and sat at the table, not for breakfast, but because it was the only place in the house that didn't carry the echo of her footsteps. Everything around me looked the same, but everything inside me had changed. It was like waking up after surgery, numb, groggy, and aware that something had been removed, even if I couldn't quite name it yet. I made another cup of coffee I didn't want. I watched the pot fill again, this time with a bitter scent that matched the taste in my mouth. I'd already canceled everything: her rent, her phone, the subscriptions. It wasn't about revenge. It was about equilibrium, about pulling the plug on a machine I'd been fueling with love, hope, and hard-earned money, only to realize it ran on indifference. For years, I told myself she appreciated it. That deep down, she just had trouble showing it. I used to explain away her eye rolls, her distant tone, her reluctance to call me dad in front of friends. But the truth was, I had always been explaining, always making excuses for a one-sided love I was too afraid to acknowledge for what it really was. I walked around the house, slowly. It wasn't large, just a modest 3-bedroom, but it was filled with the ghosts of intentions. Her room was still exactly as she left it. The wall was covered with graduation cards from friends, co-workers, and family who had no idea the depth of what had unraveled at that celebration. Her nursing books were stacked neatly on the desk I bought her. Her stethoscope, a graduation gift from me, was still in its box. I stared at it for a long time. I had engraved it with her name and the word unstoppable. Funny how I believed in her so much, I tried to manifest a future she clearly didn't believe I deserved to be a part of. The walls echoed back conversations I wished I could forget. The night she called me crying after failing her pharmacology exam. The time she sat on the kitchen floor with me eating cereal at 2 a.m. because she couldn't sleep. The Sunday she brought me coffee just because "you look tired, Dad." That one still hurt the most, not because it was kind, but because I clung to it as proof that she cared. I wanted so badly for that moment to mean something deeper. I clutched that memory like a bandage every time she pulled away emotionally. And now, even that felt rehearsed. Maybe it was real. Maybe it wasn't. I'll never know. That's the part that messes with your head. The doubt that creeps in after trust has been shattered. I didn't want to talk to anyone. The texts still came in, even a few voicemails. One was from my cousin Lena, who had flown in for the party. "Hey," she said softly, "I don't even know what to say, but you didn't deserve that. Call me if you want to talk." I didn't return the call, not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I knew I'd break down the second someone showed me compassion. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to process. I just wanted silence. Processing meant reopening wounds. Crying meant admitting that I had lost something I thought was mine to keep. And I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. Not fully. I was still somewhere between disbelief and devastation. Around noon, I sat down with my laptop and logged into our shared phone plan. I hesitated at her number. It was under my name, of course. I had paid for that phone since she was 13. The very first time I handed it to her, she cried. Said I was the best dad ever. I believed her. I really did. I removed her line from the account with trembling fingers, not out of pettiness, but because I knew now, truly, deeply knew, that my love had been misplaced. I couldn't keep enabling someone who saw my care as a utility, not a gift. Each step of that process felt like I was peeling off a scab too soon. Painful, raw, but necessary. By evening, I had boxed up a few of her things. Not in a rage, not with anger, just quiet resignation. I didn't throw anything away. I wasn't looking to erase her. I just needed space. Physical space to match the emotional one that had opened like a canyon between us. I put her photo albums in a storage bin. The baby blanket she used to sleep with. The handprint art from first grade. I touched each item like it was a shard of something sacred and broken. These weren't just mementos. They were the remnants of a dream I'd had for over 2 decades. The dream of a daughter who saw me as her father in more than just financial terms. That night, I sat in the living room, the house still quiet. Too quiet. I missed the sound of her keys in the door. I missed the way she used to hum while cooking. I missed the illusion. That's what hurt the most. Not her absence, but the collapse of everything I thought we had. The fantasy of a bond. The idea that love alone could earn love in return. I had built my life around that belief. Sacrificed vacations, worked overtime, skipped dating, passed on promotions that would have taken me out of state, all because I wanted to be present. I thought presence equaled value. But now, I wasn't sure she ever saw me as anything more than reliable background noise. Before bed, I wrote in a journal I hadn't touched in years. Just one sentence. This time, I choose me. I underlined it twice. I didn't know what choosing me looked like yet. Maybe it meant cutting ties. Maybe it meant therapy. Maybe it just meant waking up every day and reminding myself that being used wasn't the same as being loved. That night, for the first time in years, I locked my bedroom door. Not because I was afraid, but because I was drawing a line. A boundary. A quiet, personal revolution that started with saying, enough. It was 2 days later, right around noon, when my phone lit up with her name. I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. I already knew what the call was about. She hadn't called to apologize. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to see if I'd slept, or eaten, or even survived the embarrassment she'd painted me into. No, she was calling because the money had stopped. That was the first and only reason she ever reached out when something didn't work, because a service she considered guaranteed had suddenly gone offline. And in that moment, I knew exactly what kind of conversation it would be. I answered without emotion in my voice. Hello. There was no greeting on her end. Just frustration. Why can't I access my rent? My card keeps declining. Did something happen to the account? I leaned back in my chair, calm. Cold, even. The ATM stopped working. There was a pause. What? You heard me, I said, my tone firm. The ATM. It's out of service. She scoffed, the audacity in her voice so thick it made my stomach turn. Are you being serious right now? You're really going to be petty over a joke? That word, joke, set something off inside me. A slow burn that turned into a quiet, focused rage. Because that's what people say when they get caught showing their true selves. They call it humor. They hide behind sarcasm and expect you to forgive them once the room goes cold. But what she didn't understand was that I'd replayed those words 100 times. Her voice, her smirk, The complete lack of affection or appreciation. There was nothing playful about it. It was a declaration. And now she wanted to gaslight me into believing I'd misunderstood. Was it a joke? I asked her, my voice steady. Because I've been thinking about it, and I still can't find the part where you laughed. Or where you said, "Just kidding." You looked right at me and said you never loved me, but enjoyed spending my money. That's not a joke. That's a statement. A truth you were finally bold enough to say out loud. She fell silent, and for a brief second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd apologize. But instead, she went on the defensive. You're overreacting. Everyone knew I was just trying to be funny. You're being way too sensitive about this. I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because of how predictable her response was. Deny, dismiss, deflect. Classic tactics of someone who refuses to take responsibility. I've been sensitive for 23 years, I said quietly. Sensitive to your needs, your moods, your dreams. I put you through school, paid for everything without hesitation, and never once asked for anything in return. Not even respect, apparently. You think this is about money? She fired back. This is about you being dramatic. You can't just cut someone off because they made one mistake. One mistake. I repeated, stunned. Calling me an ATM in front of our entire family? Saying you never loved me? That's not one mistake. That's who you are. That was the real you. And the real you doesn't deserve another dime. She started to raise her voice, but I cut her off. Do you know what my favorite food is? I asked. What? She said, confused. My favorite food. Can you tell me? She hesitated. A steak. No, I replied. It's lasagna. I've loved it since college. I make it every year for my birthday. You've never once remembered. But I can list all your favorites, from the exact brand of oat milk you drink to the name of your childhood teddy bear. That's the difference. I studied you. You used me. That silence on her end this time was different. Not stunned. Just exposed. Like she didn't expect the spotlight to flip onto her so fast. For a moment, I wondered if she'd cry or hang up. But instead, her voice came through low and sharp. Fine. If that's how you want to be, I'll figure it out myself. Don't expect to hear from me again. I won't, I said, and I meant it. She hung up. No goodbye, no tears, just the click of a line going dead. And somehow, that hurt less than I thought it would. I sat with that silence for a while. Not grieving, not even sad, just still. It was like finally taking off a pair of shoes that had been too tight for years. I could breathe. I could feel my toes again. I could feel myself again. I had spent so long tethered to this idea of who she could be. If she just grew up, if she just matured, if she just realized. But the truth was, she already had realized. That speech was her maturity. That was her version of clarity. And it was time I found mine too. Later that day, I got an email from her biological mother. The subject line read, "Let's talk." I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. The message was short and painfully polite. Hey, I heard there was some tension at the party. I'm sure she didn't mean it how it sounded. She's young, emotional. Maybe we can meet and talk through it. I think she'll come around. I stared at the screen, equal parts amused and exhausted. Come around to what? The idea that love should be earned instead of just given? The idea that humiliating someone who raised you should have consequences? No, I wasn't playing the redemption game. Not anymore. I didn't respond. I forwarded the email to a new folder I created that night called Unresolved. It joined a growing collection of messages, pictures, and receipts I wasn't ready to delete, but no longer wanted cluttering my present. I'd been the ATM, the emotional sponge, the stand-in father for too long. That chapter was closed. Not with a bang, but with a firm, final click of a phone call ending and a heart finally deciding not to reopen the door. That night, I made lasagna. For myself. I poured a glass of wine, played some old jazz, and lit a candle. It wasn't a celebration. It wasn't a rebellion. It was a small reclaiming. A reminder that I mattered. That I had value beyond what I could provide. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was home, not because someone else was there, but because I was. Word got around faster than I expected. Within 3 days, my phone became a carousel of texts, missed calls, and vague social media posts with just enough cryptic edge to let me know they were about me. Family group chats that had been dormant for months suddenly erupted with activity. Can someone explain what happened at the party? She seemed so ungrateful. Well, I'm sure she didn't mean it like that. Everyone had a theory, an excuse, or an opinion, and none of them had been in my shoes long enough to speak with authority. The worst ones were the fence-sitters, those who told me they understood both sides, as if there was a valid counterpoint to being humiliated by your own daughter in front of 100 people. Aunt Bernice called first, her voice soft and syrupy like always, which meant she was about to say something wildly tone-deaf. Sweetheart, you've always done so much for her. Maybe she's just struggling with how to express herself. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked her calmly, would you stay silent if someone told a room full of strangers they never loved you? She paused, then let out a dramatic sigh like I was the one being difficult. You're right, I hate seeing the family divided. And that was the line that confirmed it for me. This wasn't about my pain. It never was. It was about appearances, unity, smoothing things over so no one had to sit with the discomfort of a real fracture. But I wasn't smoothing a damn thing. Then came the other side. Those who didn't try to excuse her, but instead validated me in a way that made the weight of it all easier to carry. My cousin Reggie, blunt as ever, sent me a one-liner that made me laugh despite myself. You shut down the ATM? Good. You should have shut it down after she totaled your car and didn't even say thank you. My friend Marcus dropped by unannounced with a bottle of whiskey and a tired look on his face. We didn't talk much at first. He just sat across from me on the porch, lit a cigar, and nodded. Man, you raised a whole adult, and she turned around and made you a joke. That's not on you. That's on her. We drank in silence for a while. The kind of silence only close friends can sit in without it being awkward. Then he leaned forward and looked me dead in the eye. Let me ask you something. If a stranger said that to you, would you ever talk to them again? I shook my head. Exactly. So why should blood make it okay? That was the clearest anyone had put it. I'd been taught my whole life that family was everything. That you forgive, forget, and keep moving forward because love conquers all. But Marcus reminded me that love without respect is just manipulation wrapped in sentimentality. And I was done being manipulated, even by someone I once called my daughter. The strangest part of the fallout was how quiet she stayed. No follow-up texts, no emails, no attempts to apologize or explain. Just radio silence. I checked her social media out of curiosity. Her page was still active, photos from the party still up. She hadn't deleted the speech video someone posted either, which told me she felt no shame, no regret. She'd either doubled down or convinced herself that what she did wasn't all that serious. That's the part that stuck with me the most. Not that she hurt me, but that she didn't even seem to notice she had. That kind of emotional blindness doesn't come from one bad moment. It comes from years of not seeing someone as a full human being. I ran into her roommate Claire at the grocery store a few days later. She looked surprised to see me, and even more uncomfortable once she realized who I was. I smiled politely, but I could tell she was trying to decide whether to say anything or just escape with her cart of frozen meals. Eventually, she cleared her throat and said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know that not everyone at the party agreed with what she said. A lot of us were really shocked." I nodded, appreciating the effort. "Thanks, Claire. That means something." She hesitated, then added, "I think she's going through stuff. But that doesn't excuse it. I'm sorry you had to hear that." That apology didn't come from my daughter, but it soothed a small part of me anyway. The house had become quieter than I ever remembered. Not just empty, hollow. The kind of quiet that echoes back every thought you try to suppress. I started sleeping on the couch, not because I couldn't go to bed, but because her room was down the hall, and just walking past it made my stomach knot. The door was closed now, not out of anger, but preservation. Every time I walked by, it felt like passing a grave. Not of a person, but of a bond. A connection I once thought was unbreakable. A love I thought was mutual. What I mourned wasn't her presence, it was my illusion. And grief doesn't care if the person is still alive. It latches on just the same. One night, around midnight, I got a message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. It read, "Saw the clip from the party. You didn't deserve that. If you ever want to catch up, I'm here." That hit harder than I expected. The clip had made the rounds, apparently. I didn't even know someone had filmed it, but of course they had. Everyone records everything now. What I didn't realize until then was that my humiliation had gone viral, at least within our little social circle. I was no longer just a father who got disrespected. I was a cautionary tale. A man who gave too much, trusted too hard, and got burned for the world to see. But the more people chimed in, the more resolute I became. I didn't feel ashamed anymore. I felt awake. Everyone had an opinion, but only I had the full story. Only I had lived the late nights, the sacrifices, the unwavering devotion. And only I had the authority to decide where my line was drawn. Some people said I should forgive her. Others said she'd come around eventually. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't waiting for a return anymore. I wasn't waiting for remorse or redemption. I had let go, not because I didn't care, but because I finally did. For myself. The biggest shift happened the moment I realized I no longer needed anyone to validate my choice. Not the relatives who thought I overreacted, not the friends who applauded me, not the people still trying to play peacemaker. My peace didn't need negotiation. It wasn't up for debate. I had found it the moment I canceled her access, the moment I ended that call, the moment I chose silence over begging for love. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. And I had finally decided that mine mattered. It's been 4 months. The air in the house has settled into a kind of stillness I once feared, but now find comforting. There's no more rush of footsteps down the stairs, no more random Amazon boxes arriving with things I never ordered, but always paid for. Her room remains closed, not locked, just untouched. I don't avoid it anymore, but I don't linger either. It's not a shrine, and it's not a wound. It's simply a room now. A room that once held a future I used to believe in, and now holds only the silence of everything I finally let go of. Some nights, I pass by and rest my hand on the doorknob, not to open it, but just to remind myself I could. The difference now is, but they don't live in the silence I do. They don't wake up in a house built with care only to be dismissed like furniture. What surprised me most was how easy it became to breathe without the weight of her expectations. I thought I'd feel empty without her, but instead, I felt lighter. I started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. I joined a local community group that meets every other Wednesday. Just regular folks sharing coffee and stories. No drama, no manipulation, just connection. Genuine, quiet connection. The kind that reminds you the world is still full of good people who see you, not what they can get from you. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a person again. Not a service provider, not an emotional doormat. Just me. There was a day, a few weeks ago, when I found a voicemail from her. I hadn't noticed it at first. My phone had auto-sorted it as unknown caller. But when I pressed play, I recognized her voice immediately. "Hey," she said, sounding tired, unsure. "I don't know if this number still works for you. I need help. I'm behind on rent, and my phone's about to get cut off." I didn't know who else to call. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a request, couched in desperation. I sat there for a long time after it ended, not angry, just reflective. Part of me wanted to call back. Not to help, but to say something final. Something that would close the loop. But I didn't. I deleted the message. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. She wasn't reaching out to reconnect. She was reaching out to reset the machine. But the machine had shut down for good. I think that's the part most people don't understand. Walking away isn't about hatred. It's about survival. Emotional survival. I loved her so deeply it cost me pieces of myself I'll never get back. And in the end, that love was unreciprocated. Not unloved in the passive way parents sometimes experience when kids grow distant, but rejected, mocked. It takes a certain kind of cruelty to do what she did. And it takes a certain kind of courage to not chase after someone who has clearly shown you who they are. I had to learn, slowly and painfully, that some bonds aren't meant to be mended. Some people are only meant to be loved from a distance, so far away they can no longer touch the part of you that once bled freely for them. One evening, as autumn set in, I stood in the backyard under a canopy of orange and gold leaves. I thought about the seasons we'd shared, the snowball fights when she was little, the summer road trips, the fall festivals where she'd run ahead, begging for hot cider. Those memories still belong to me. They're not tainted by what she did. They're just complete. A chapter. A beautiful, painful chapter in a book I now know how to close. I don't hate her. I just can't keep sacrificing my peace to maintain the illusion of a relationship that never truly existed. And the truth is, I'm better now. Not healed all the way, but whole enough to know what I deserve going forward. I've started journaling again. Real journaling, not just the one-sentence catharsis from that awful week. And I wrote this a few nights ago. Sometimes, the bravest thing a parent can do is walk away. Not from love, but from misuse. Not from duty, but from destruction. I read it aloud, slowly, letting each word settle. I don't know if she'll ever grow into the kind of person who understands what she lost. But that's not my responsibility anymore. My job isn't to fix her or wait for her or hope she changes. My job now is to live well, to be kind to myself, to build something new, not out of bitterness, but from the soft, quiet power of boundaries held firm. And if she ever calls again, needing help, needing money, needing me, I'll let it ring. Because the ATM stopped working. And I, finally, started living. Sometimes love isn't enough. Not when it's one-sided, taken for granted, or mocked in public. This story isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming self-worth after years of silent sacrifice. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you love deeply just to protect your peace, drop a comment and share your experience. Let others know they're not alone. And if this story resonated with you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories about family, boundaries, and emotional truth. See you soon in the next story.